Adult judge, okay. Um, Alright. Okay. Cool. The contextual regional stability, the African Union enjoys high legitimacy now. The diplomatic status right at all. But for the African Union enjoys both domestic and international legitimacy in the Union. Negotiate with green diplomatic initiatives show leadership on global importance. Africa's slowly increasing its presence includes in multilateral organizations, and Africa's stable due to regional unity prefer long-term trends over snapshots. Over the past 5 decades, three violent conflicts have occurred in Europe. For comparison, there have been more than 25 energy conflicts with those without aggression, defining relationship between Africa countries and cooperation between states as a collective identity. Pan-Africanism emphasizes unity and collaboration among countries and affirming regional security in 2 ways. One is African Union collapse, affirming violence and blocking trade doctrine that's Arabic. And 2, recognition can challenge voluntary principles. Africans adopt a policy respecting borders on during colonial times and trying the African Union policy back. Every country have followed this principle free that recognition can set dangerous presence and independently prompts Egyptian and Somalian backlash, which disrupts global agreement as in 1924. Somalia strongly opposed to recognition of Somalia, warning that Somalia resists any attempt to claim this land. Military alliance between Somalia and Egypt, coupled with the competing alliance between Egypt, Ethiopia, and Somalia, and high intentions without intervention, its ability to disrupt global trade through the Red Sea, and trade disruptions shock global food supplies. Great 17, destruction of maritime choke points can devastate global food security. The world's most important corridors, including the Bab Abadam Strait, the Strait, the Suez Canal, and account for over 60% of the food worldwide. And food shocks causing the crib 19. With food under stress, nothing can be ruled out. Chemical weapons in Syria, nuclear conflict in South Asia, and the Middle East. Russia, the U.S. or France will deploy atomic weapons to quell refugees, including famine, food insecurity is the most likely scenario for the termination of the human species. And African Union legitimacy is vital in meeting conflict imperative for Solomon 20. African leaders are bound by norms related to sovereignty, respect for colonial borders, collective commitment to norms provides African third parties social status that provides legitimacy when mediating conflict. African third parties are effective because governments perceive them as legitimate. The mediation Africa, Kenya, electoral parties possess no authority to promise aid, but did have legitimacy when the aid arrived. The conflict parties signed an agreement. And 2 is runaway independence movements. Somalia's recent election puts us on the brink. That's around 1210. The recent election in Somalia important as a created opportunity to reduce hedges. The recognition of Somalia as independent will until a domino effect of separatist movements across the region, and specifically an independent domino spread secession movements across Africa. That's Garba 10-2. Geopolitical instability and temporary robbing the Somalia regions like Sudan, Kenya, Ethiopia create photograph for secessionists, Djibouti, and Eritrea pressuring conflicts leading to widespread insecurity, driving in other actors, and intensifying conflict. And overall, new wars in Africa cause great power drawing the teeth. 20. African rivalries from Egypt, Djibouti, Ethiopia, and Sudan risk all liability conflict. U.S., China, Russia, and Italy secure bases and true power trade for great power conflict. Global powers will be drawn to protect access to key trade routes, and great power goes nuclear to the top notch. 18. All the going nuclear high. China has nukes intermingled with conventional military, making it difficult to attack one without attacking the other. U.S. military campaign targeting China's conventional forces threatened Chinese leaders to use their nukes while they are still able to nukes generators to escalate and contention to terrorism. Somalia has recently normalized relations with Ethiopia, which was previously on track to be the first country to grant Somalian independence this year. 12 Ethiopia and Somalia agree to respect one another's sovereignty. The two have been at loggerheads when Ethiopia signed a controversial agreement between Somalia and the least section of the Coastline exchange. Ethiopia was recognized Somalia as an independent country, and recognizing Somalia would wreck Somali-Ethiopian relations, stunting collaboration and empowering Al-Shabaab and spills. 1013 Somalia is opposed to Somalia's independence in response to the board threatening to expel Ethiopian troops helping to fight Al-Shabaab, and Al-Shabaab is the prospect of Ethiopia taking control of Somalia's territory to recruit nationalist Somali youth, and the brink is now finding new Ethiopian troops by the end of the year to fight Al-Shabaab. This builds 1013. The dispute over Somalia and Ethiopia packed a later replacement of 20,000 strong military force fighting Al-Shabaab. The AU is supposed to replace its existing force before the end of the year's end. The AU force includes thousands of Ethiopia, which is critical depending on Al-Shabaab, and otherwise Al-Shabaab will get nukes. Africa is uniquely vulnerable due to deficient regulatory system. That's Wade 18. Africa present a facilitated integration environment, weak borders, allow for terrorists to smuggle fissile material. Other factors are border blocking, outdated equipment, and inadequate infrastructure, especially in case in Somalia with terrorist groups like terrorist organizations like Al-Shabaab. The decline of security and uranium production sites because its ability to track terror and nuclear terror causes economic collapse and nuclear that's wrong. 17. A single terrorist nuke would ripple throughout the world. The economic impact would be enormous. Insurance companies would ruin investor confidence would be affected, throwing a wrench in the global trade. The country attacked by last out with the nuclear threshold already crossed, caused by escalated nuclear use, and nuclear will cause extinction at star. 22. Peer reviewed studies highlighting smoke and super block sunlight, returning crops from being burned nuclear war, but not to massive extinction. Oh, yeah. Sorry. Um, And,
It should just be, I think it should just be Joshua's eye.
good.
From contentualized democracy, African democracy is declining. The UB 12 finds that Africa remains a dangerously authoritarian style of democracy, deteriorated improvements have largely stalled. They may even be regressing. Somaliland is a model. Mills at all in 2005. Somaliland can join the wave for countries to follow regular election generated to democracy instead of the plan system. Somaliland improved democratic norms, regional democratic super recognition promotes democracy. Paying to one finds that opposite recognition comes from authoritarian regimes. Use Somaliland's democratic successes. President to AU recognition signal democracy value in Africa, an opportunity to build a democratic region. Africa's key urbanization, rapid population growth, global to impact Africa's whole region with rapidly growing population, most rapidly urbanized CO2 output, growing faster than population urbanization leads to CO2 emissions increase by factor 14, climate decision making not impactful, undercut efforts African emission overwhelm efforts elsewhere. Democracies are key to solving climate change processes. The more litigation by climate change, democracy, lack of free flow of info for civil society and mobilize free expression checks and balances and creates likely involves correcting decarbonization is something societies must do. Consumer habits will change democracies better than any other political arrangement. It's essential 10.2 that climate change collapse society, mass extinctions, climate change trigger catastrophic risks such as conflict, disease, climate change, exacerbate water, food insecurity, coalescence, system-wide synchronous failures, great power conflicts over carbon budgets, climate impacts, convention due to overfishing. Somalia is applying overfishing. A low 25 illegal fishing off Somalia coast reaches alarming levels to target for criminal networks. Practice past sustainable limits without acting stocks collapse by 2026. Somalia's waters are major ground for tuna. Somali fisheries minister allow companies to fish their lack of transparency. Somali government struggles vessels continue destructive methods. Recognition is key to expand Somaliland's jurisdiction. Since 2017 times Somaliland starts the new 200-mile EEZ. The new EEZ enables Somaliland to produce maritime fisheries in the Gulf of Aden. Somaliland repudiates Somalia's claim to Somaliland's waters and states entitled the maritime zones. Somaliland enforces sustainability better as the Don 24 finds the SCG protects Somaliland's water from illegal fishing equipment, modern boats, radar equipment, and enforces the fact that the SCG has several bases of equipment infrastructure class, which by Somaliland to combat illegal fishing is a significantly enhanced prospect for community illegal fishing. The region is key now and vital for host for foreign powers. Glacier 23% of the Horn of Africa has the most productive fishing in the world. Small, easy fleets travel across the globe, low to access. Migratory species conflict in the region emerge from unmanaged competition. This inflation fleets allow follow stocks. Horn of Africa has high biology fishes from infants to neutral upland. Global dive demands targeting the region. India, Iran, China, Pakistan, and China has found nuclear conflict at the 21 and 12 times that if people are hungry, the state is not safe. Breakdown large region run for a war called credible scenario for World War III. Nuclear wars, cloud extinction, stop 15 times that war with nukes would be massive extinction event and create environment people learn to go through life against and raise pandemics. Somaliland risk of understudied pathogenic vectors in Jamal 23 times and 4 pathogens in Somaliland plus livestock TVT for understudied insufficient data and poor approaches there the need for more and better sites so that sustainable control strategies can be implemented. Opportunity to purchase the bright lines more problems than ever before. Disease are moving in areas where they not exist before. Vector-borne disease account for more than 17% of all infectious disease. Climate change, global conditions, and expand lifestyle disease carrying. Somaliland lacks information systems and scarce and dependent on internal health information fundamental for health ecosystems. Somaliland HIS assessment found major weaknesses in policy strategic and global framework in place. Fragmented information systems, lack of recognition, and hindered progress. There be 15 multilateral agencies who will not deal with Somaliland as an independent entity to challenge racial for political recognition. and cut the wall card, getting access to the WHO directly would increase pandemic prevention to be 23 times and weekly launching global network to help detect and prevent infectious diseases, international happening surveillance, how local connected countries and region improving systems for collecting and analyzing sample data, driving public health decision making, sharing the goal is to give every country access to pathogen genomic sequencing. It's trying to 22 finds that Africa facing growing risk for outbreaks caused by a zoonotic pathogen, there's a 63% increase in zoonotic outbreaks, cut the card there. Pandemics risks new systems, 2021 vulnerability, conflict, actions that destabilize right systems, risk nuclear weapons, pandemic threat, weapons of mass destruction, pandemic capacity, commanders who issue nuclear strike rating accidents and opportunity for state use pandemic cover for provocation and belief that the adversary is the same. I'm just gonna send a word on it.
Yeah. Let's talk about your argument on pandemics, right? So your evidence indicates that the WHO is already launching global initiatives around the world, just not in Somalia, correct? So, how do you access your existential level of impact, like at all?
Yeah, it would be the fact that there are unique pathogens in Somaliland right now that haven't been studied before. That's why it doesn't matter if you can have robust pandemic prevention in every single part of the globe. The reason that Somaliland is key is because the vectors there are stabilizing in a way we've never seen them before. They're unique and more likely than ever. But I'll take the question.
Wait, this is really important, right? Like, so walk me through this. So assuming the pandemic is really deadly, really transmissible, it spills over across Somalia to other countries of the US, Europe, in which the WHO already has global initiatives there. Doesn't that also like already suppress it?
No, it doesn't, right? Because when we haven't studied these kinds of pathogens before they spread,
Can the WHO just like study these pathogens in every other country when it spreads?
it's going to be a little.
Like that's what
it's going to be too little, too late, right?
What evidence does that?
It's like not the evidence, the analysis that we make that these pathogens are unique. But we can have a minute on that. I'll take the question.
That's fine.
Let's talk a little bit about regional stability, right?
Yeah.
You're saying that there are going to be like trade disruptions that shock global food supplies and cause extinction. Insofar, we've seen similar trade disruptions with like the Ukraine grain crisis. Why specifically would this food shock lead to extinction?
Yeah, so the policy evidence is excellent on this question. It indicates that the Val and the Suez Canal account for 60% of global food. I would say that's pretty significant.
Wait, where's the Suez Canal in relation to Somalia?
Like, it's pretty close.
Yeah, I would say that you're just a couple hundred kilometers further north, right? But the larger issue
the argument that we're making is that
larger issue there is that not all of the trade in the Bar al Mandeb Strait or the Suez Canal is coming directly from Somaliland. So insofar they don't control the trade there, why wouldn't other actors spill in on trade?
Well, the argument that we're making is that other actors cannot fill out trade. A lot of the evidence says that Somalia and Egypt, which is what they've historically done, will build a coalition and attack Ethiopia and Somalia.
And
when that happens, that
block global trade to cause extinction.
That is exactly our
argument. Sure.
Cool. Talk about this argument on overfishing. So, why hasn't your impact triggered in overfishing in numerous other countries, for example, China, the Philippines, Indonesia?
Yeah, the reason it hasn't occurred is because we're reaching a critical mass of fish loss.
What happens?
And in the other regions that you're talking about, like I'll explain, right?
Yeah.
In the other regions you're talking about, there's still some kind of effective control. But what we would say is that the only thing that we can control is Somaliland's fishery stocks, and those are being uniquely harmed by illegal fishing.
If these other countries were effectively controlled, then I would say that overfishing would just not be a thing. But
because it's
like,
reaching.
it's pretty fast.
That's
fine.
The order will just be.
Yeah. On democracy, one person violating the Constitution against democracy and progress due to the pursuit of independence, which the act takes away. That's what's 21. Elections took place only after a product of Douglas elections were shown to win recognition of realities of the powers exclusive to the ruling claim. No other is allowed to compete militia. After an instance of civilians right to do sort of pervasive freedom of speech prescribed arbitrary detention and extrajudicial killings are common and used to suppress opposition. And there are BB evidences of change post after and numerous old causes that result in decrease in democracy, corruption, external actors, incompetence, etc. All make modeling worthless. And House 21 is a direct index to the Mills evidence. Mills only scratches the surface. Somaliland is a corrupt and fake democratic state, and their cotton evidence is heavily miscut. And actors like Djibouti, Egypt, and Turkey all have personalized gold in the Gulf of Aden, and the root cause is authoritarianism. And second term, non-recognition has kept democracy in check. As you make 11 Somaliland dependence on local revenue, keep attempts to exceed constitutional limits in check. Somaliland's government is a product of Democratic coalition formal limits on presidential power. The government doesn't believe democratic process. No one has enough power to destroy it. And three, delineate delinkage. So Somaliland is not a legitimate democracy because Elder 21 in Somaliland, every election see high rates of state interference, intimidation, breaking, stifling opposition, media freedoms, public criticism, authorities, criminalized high electoral participation, mistaking extruded democratization. This also answers their explicit warning about why democracy is spilling over. They've only isolated elections as the warrant, and on climate there's no impact, and also answers slavery because they're controlling for disease depends on warming. One, the time scale solved is far too hard. 17, the time scales over which such change in my means that humanity is able to adapt to avoid extinction. Two, no resource wars prefer political theory over a guest editor. This code 20, while riots may emerge as standing requires resource scarcity, undermine the resources necessary for violence, and three settlements get drawn before the war happens. That's North Trump 2K, a military company requires resources of leaders to make a renegotiate settlement that ensures livelihood of resources that may be reallocated. 4, 5 minutes to cause extinction. Time for outsider. This current 19, there are no signs of racist climate change breakdown. Is giving humanization, exchange protection, and extreme best are difficult to make, and very greatly between models. Citing the second likelihood is speculation on fishing. One term, the out causes Egyptian backlash. It destroys Somaliland, create this idea on 24. Egypt imposed diplomatic economic blockade on Somaliland, recognition disrupted Egypt's retreat and fragmentation Somaliland. Egypt's control and Somaliland presents direct rights to Egypt's hegemony. Mark that hegemony and mode prerequisite. It's a prerequisite fishing routes and access won't matter if they A, don't have resource to do it, and B, have an economy to sell it, or C, have maritime access from the blockades. 2, delink it all causes explain their unions as blooming. 16, there's future fish, but a small decline is not expected due to natural variability. Geography for is not harvesting. 3, delink it, no solvency for true causes as O'Connor, OA, killing off, marine like asphyxiating sensitive culprit or fertilizing water, sewage, global warming, industrial waste, or delink it, or industry self-corrects avoid collapse as legal. 2, because causes the rapidly the fish becomes scarcer. The fisheries historically reach commercial extinction before they are depleted. Cost of capturing remain fish exceed returns become unprofitable. Thus, extinction may be avoided. 5, delink it, the Somali government is corrupt as reported 24. Illegal fishing by Chinese vessels, alarming vessels, particularly by China, engage in destructive practice and purpose to remain challenged for limited resources and absence of coastline officials colluding with reward companies, issuing legal licenses and turning a blind eye on pandemics. The app ignites waves of instability, elite capture stateless and committing interest that's off below 25. Recognition with some ways elite level pursuit for helping out expanded dialogue when made Somaliland work is the elite right religion for people sovereignty both which free politics from having the people all the drivers of their well-being that will follow breaking Somaliland we say with Jubilee and Conley will went out will work out watch out and on their and turn the default actually and on the office proper one all causes lot of government funding and for back production for aid protocols are useless after effective technologies also on 24 at current levels it will take around develop effective vaccines and these shells production vary widely. Vaccines also lack protection. Manufacturers just do not have facilities or close syringes. Shipping of cost will be challenged to countries manufacturers lack protection and for production. And 2, a young population experienced with past outbreaks and make Africa resistant to dynamics of the Omaya. 22, Africa young population prevalence is lower, which is instrumental in making pandemic intolerance experience with previous outbreaks makes countries respond faster. 3, Africa can only impact African nation will alter multilateral forums, including the WHO, UN, and EU. So for every other continent, fairly proven by COVID, their WHO link is disconnected from the rest of the argument. They haven't read that suggests that WHO is researching the specific vectors and discussing that are new. Also, to know more, but the WHO uniquely hinges on Somaliland to focus on existential pathogens. 4 pandemics of war, appears from COVID as COVID 20, COVID-19, we can all have power. We believe the hospital will go down when people fall ill, they can't perform melancholy. Is there more, please? Yes. Cool.
What card do you left?
Side of draw. First two cards, top of this file cards. Probably the most available thing to use. Ours one is. Let's have a little try. One thing we'll speak to, there's no why there's no research from country roots, no the impact when you cross it down to this, you want to do stuff, no research from food and their internal linked food word is research, which is purple defense on the C1, don't let them make calculations of the purple defense on their case. On C2, what's considered as all cause and you can never solve the root cause of being over and nothing happens, then extinction happens in some way in the future, which keeps it all the time because it doesn't matter because it happens in other places. On to pandemics. One, on this concept that like climate change is like interlinked for argument, no, climate change just makes the vectors more communicable, which makes the situation worse. Climate change is not the root cause of pandemic happening, nor is it the driver of extinction. The driver of extinction is the fact that 31 new vectors have been there, but they have not been studied developing the lack of systems in Somaliland, and specifically the reason that you need to study these systems in the first place. And I'll tell you what the best mechanism. And they consider the link that the who can't be in these places in the first place, which creates a lack of information and technology and creating and creating these patterns. Then sorry. All right. Oh, but then they said then they said they're going to turn to the African index. Maybe so if you look at the Apollo 25, it literally says that if there's actual proper funding done and there's you actually do like proper economic opportunities in the region, it stops this like social political stagnation and decay, and it'll actually help the country. But which is why we say that foreign direct investment directly helps catalyze long-term development. Level 24. International organizations allow for increased investment in locales, economic growth, and improve infrastructure, so long as the opportunity to join international organizations further breaking global development and economic systems. And that they can solve increasing healthcare infrastructure. Mark 23. Recommend the economic growth of the taxing healthcare sector with the ability of one health insurance, recommend healthcare accessible and index their own efforts, which literally says that investment and economic stability would not create would stop the instability from happening. Then this is all causes. Their evidence to take in the context of emergencies. We definitely saw during COVID that it was a hard roll, and we saw countries that were able to create vaccines for purpose, or even that there will always be funding for this emergency, and people just go to that and do funding from the global institutions. The global institutions can never create vaccines in the first place if they don't have the information on the pathogen vectors in the first place, which comes from survival, which is like it's key to called survival. On that, people in Africa have like immunity. There's no word to what unstudied disease, and we said that they've had disease they're only immune to disease that they've seen in the past. Like SARS was strand for a previously known disease, but the disease that are from ticks are not known disease. They think pandemics don't cause war, but you can just cross the fact that there's long-range connected, and so far COVID was from a known disease and known strain. SARS was from an unknown strain, which is why there'll be more chaos. But it takes longer time to create vaccine, which is the only way to solve the pandemic, is like stopping from happening in the first place, but containing it in Somaliland and Somalia and the regions in Africa in the first before it spreads worldwide. That point. Oh, wait. Oh, yeah. They said there's no evidence that the WHO research on specific vectors. It literally creates information systems and does research on pathogens and genomic mapping, which nothing solves that. And they said that why can't WHO actually to pathogens elsewhere, but the pathogens are rooting in Somalia. By the time it gets to other countries, it creates a spread. And it's rooting in Somalia, and it gets to, once it spreads, it's hard to contain it, and containing is the key to solving pandemics. At that point, go into their case. On backward, the Milwaukee evidence in non-music cases, the refugees and exploiting defense of the Yemenis to prevent rebels attacking ships along the most critical breakdowns. That's means the instabilities already having trade breakdowns will have no more by African tip, also there's no one regional stability specific. Their evidence just asserts don't let me new ones and reason never the internal link and term recognition forces on the table. Dr. 14. Recognizing to line for some maybe for some forces to put activate some others could receive less support from international donors which turn influence peace making and academics in the south and prerequisite for women's self stability. And on the case we just cross out the food wars. On secession, the Heat 20 card for drawing is terrible. There's no internal link to their impact. It just says that DG Booty is important to the Great Party, and nowhere does it say that it will escalate to Great Party conflict. It's also highlighted deterministic. It says economic military conflict between Washington and Beijing would impact DG Booty, not the other way around. The conflict in DG Booty and secession movement DG Booty would impact conflict. At that point, there's no internal link to the actual secession movement drawing global power. That's the only internal link on their evidence. And movements are escalated here. Verse 15. There are overall secession movement including the settlements in Africa, and despite the very few numbers very successful, even population support movements really have political or military capability. On their case, on terror, it's impossible for terror to build new country challenges. Verse 15. Uranium or plutonium is very highly connected, and terrorist systems require that constructing a closed weapon and dual equivalent problem. The plutonium is illegal to chemical separation of additional competencies of themselves. Even one discussing high quality does not be discovered. There's the government says that this is uranium and plutonium available, isn't that you can chemically separate them or detonate them plutoniumly. And go to the incentive analysis. Also about incentive for news. Start 22. No also within the 50 kilometers of the study group may have a large interest in illicit material and nuclear that heard that out of those press support. Their evidence just says that elsewhere also does damage, and then later in the card it says that Africa has like free like you can plutonium, but notice that the incentive analysis for which is only we do, and that's clean. Yeah.
You also find something in the book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's fine. Are you good for last one? Okay. So on your third contention, you have evidence that says that pathogens or new pathogens are emerging in Somalia. I agree with that. What piece of evidence says that those pathogens are uniquely dangerous compared to other pathogens emerging in other?
Sure. So a couple things is they're understudied and that they're becoming more communicable because of heat.
So,
and climate change.
Which piece of evidence makes the comparison that says that uniquely diseases in Somalia are the ones that are understudied?
I mean, it does a couple things. The first piece of evidence says that there's an urgent need for more and better studies. And the second piece of evidence literally says that we need to stop the Africa hotspot because of its climate warming, which makes.
I'm just asking for like comparison. Like,
I mean, like none of the evidence is comparative. It just doesn't know how dangerous these vectors are because they haven't been studied because there's no infrastructure to study these vectors. Like it literally says that there's been like 31 instances of these vectors being found in animals, but like they haven't been able to properly study it.
So it's impossible to predict the impact of new pathogens, is what I'm hearing.
I mean, it says pretty clearly that there's been an increase in outbreaks and it causes zoonotic outbreak, and as part of that is the WHO evidence literally says because of the zoonotic building.
Increase in outbreaks sounds like every disease,
But
not just a
our
disease.
argument is that the issue is it hasn't been transmitted to humans yet because they are just vectors, right? Vectors are the ways they get there, and the pathogens have been like infected through 31 different vectors, but they haven't been communicable yet. Okay, we haven't reached the great point of climate change, getting the pathogens long enough to be communicable.
That's fine.
All right, sure. Let me get a question.
Yeah.
Let's talk specifically about this argument on terror. Can you give me a piece of evidence that says all Shabab wants nukes? The evidence just says all Shabab like terrorists, but like and then just says like there is like plutonium and uranium.
Our argument is that, well, we agree that Al-Shabaab does not want nukes now. Our argument is that the affirmative would uniquely increase the likelihood.
But where's the incentive? Like just saying like, oh, there is uranium
I
that's a
mean,
little.
terrorists have like incentives that are like.
But don't you have to read incentives for an argument? Like you can't just say like.
I don't think I have to read a piece of evidence that says that terrorists want to kill people.
But I mean, there's different ways because we can give you comparative analysis why they don't like nuclear weapons as their way of doing damage.
Our Wayne evidence says that Al-Shabaab is uniquely likely to get nukes as a result of the rich environment.
Wait,
and
where
if
does
you're
it
talking
say-
about the incentives, it says that.
Where does it say Al-Shabaab wants nukes? It just says that because of like uranium being free or like little loosely regulated.
Border conflicts, outdated equipment, and inadequate infrastructure. This is especially the case in Somalia with terrorist organizations like Al-Shabaab.
Yeah, but it doesn't say, there's not the word nukes there. It just says that there's like weaker precautions in like Africa for like.
Okay, that's fine. Can I have a question?
Sure.
Let's talk about pandemics. Which piece of evidence says the WHO uniquely studies new pathogens?
Wait, that's the whole point of this pathogen surveillance network. It studies.
Like you're hinging your argument on these like new pathogens compared to like old diseases. Like
The
I'm asking.
idea is that there's no research infrastructure or ways to research what is happening, and this new mapping system is genomically able to map the pathogens and their disease strands.
Thanks, AJ. Okay, we'll take the rest of it.
What's gonna be the neg way? They have conceded a link on C1. They've conceded the writer evidence that indicates that AU legitimacy is increasing now as a result of more diplomatic stability. Fully drop the AU collapse link that indicates that recognition inherently violates the Constitutive Act of the African Union, which restores legitimacy and violates the principle of non-interference, which shows any chance of effective government, which causes internal gridlock with internal gridlock with the regional body, which prevents it from escalating conflict. They drop the escalation of conflict in Africa and inevitably cause great powers to intervene in the region because they want to protect their trade routes. To protect escalation of nuclear voices to create a cause the nuclear famine. There's no answer to that at the end of the day. The only response they have is the response is internally, but they have dropped it because Africa is key to things such as trade routes. And great powers are already intervening in the region. A conflict that disrupts these trade routes will inevitably force great powers to rush in the region to protect these. The difference that escalation goes nuclear, both of them the cause of extinction. There's no counter work rather than internal link, and there's like there's no ink extended. And at the end of the day, they have no like ink on the A class work, which we probably should evaluate it. The way to it. One is time. You drop that as soon as you affirm the perception of the affirmative being an illegitimate endorsement of Somalian secession instantaneously caused AU to lose legitimacy. While it takes decades for Somalia or the WHO to initiate things to pandemic preparedness in the region, which is the R-link ally on time frame. Secondly, Turns case, when you do not have the AU, which is a regional body, you cannot facilitate inter-regional cooperation to solve for things such as terrorism or things such as pandemic, which means that all of this solving rely on the AU existing in the first place. Secondly, but also Turns case, if we're bringing any link instability, that means that no country such as WHO or EU will try to intervene in the region to conduct research opportunities because they see the region as volatile. With any risk the affirmative cause instability in the region cause the prevention. Also, our argument is not about resource wars. You can't just kick the defense from above. Our argument is about broader African instability that draws in great powers, which is another turn apply. On the turn about cooperating with Somalia, there's no uniqueness on the turn, and they drop that Somalia sees Somalia as an existential risk to their sovereignty, which means there's no impact to the turn. Their case. Okay. On C1, on C2, on C3, the first argument I'll go for is the fact that they have not answered the impact defense properly. The only response that they have is that COVID-19 was real. Sorry, the new pandemic is real. COVID-19 was also real at the time of this writing, and they've dropped it because pandemics affect every single country the same, and every single country destroys their military and economically. No country will try to lash out on another country because every single country is weak, which means that they'll be more incentivized to do something, turn inward, focus on austerity pressures inward rather than looking outward and trying to lash out. This is just drop analysis and all their products are incoherent. The second response that I'll go for is the fact that on the FDI argument about how FDI spurs conflict, they dropped the Apollo evidence that indicates that only the elite benefit from the FDI in the first place because Somalian is very hierarchical, which is why only the elites will gain access to the FDI, and there's no access to healthcare, etc., which means that there's no link to this argument. The final response that I will go for is the fact that they only solve in Africa. Remember, their argument is how the WHO is conducting global initiatives broadly, which means that even if they prove that Somalia, we're not able to solve for things such as Somalia, if the pandemics are able to spill over to other countries' initiatives will also solve that, which is dropped. It means that they don't have access to the existential impact. Remember, they have no option to drop. They've dropped impact even and they conceded a link on C1.
Uh, 58 cents.
And pandemic, Somaliland has that pandemic because there are unique understudy vectors there. These diseases are prevalent and increased because of climate change. Somaliland currently lacks information systems. When you recognize Somaliland as a state, then the World Health Organization can directly give it the international pathogen surveillance network, which will solve for extinction because when there's a pandemic, weapons of mass destruction first use spectral is lower in every conflict and every hospital lights up, leaving newborn extinction. Let's respond to the responses they give you last speech. First, they tell you that COVID was real and didn't cause war. Just the amount of uncertainty about the diseases that could emerge is enough to put pressure on leaders and make them insecure enough to know. COVID was close enough to SARS, which means that there wasn't going to be a war because people already knew that they had some semblance of a vaccine or some way to solve it. But they tell you that only elites benefit from FBI. There's no access to healthcare, no link. But the link is not necessarily about access to healthcare. It's about access to research and infrastructure in order to solve back for like understanding the pandemic and the pathogens that are in the region. But then they tell you that we only solve in Africa. But Africa is where the worst pathogens are coming from, which is really rooted in Somaliland because of climate change uniquely affecting the carbonization there. And the only time, even if you can solve it in other places, it's too late because by the time it makes it somewhere else because it is far too dangerous to be doing the research in the middle of the pandemic. Let's do the weighing. First, we'll link into their, they tell you that perception caused the AU to lose legitimacy. There's a huge delineating timeframe issue on their case because none of their internal link triggers right away, but we're able to start researching and tracking the genome immediately. That's how you solve back for a pandemic. But then they tell you that the AU turns case because you can't solve for pandemics without the AU. The AU itself does not matter for pandemics insofar you're always going to have the World Health Organization, which can dictate to countries individually how to do things and then produce interoperability. You don't need the AU to do that. But then the pandemics kill the legitimacy of the AU because the fact that when you have a pandemic, you're not necessarily focusing on diplomacy or international relations. But then there's a prerequisite because people are always going to intervene for wars, but people don't intervene for pandemics because they don't know how dangerous this one is. It's try or die for the because you know that the squad is going to lead us to an inevitable death from a lack of research on new stabilizing pathogens, but you aren't sure whether any of their scenarios will cause extinction. Even if you're skeptical of the pathogens causing existential level disease, they haven't made that argument properly. They haven't fleshed it out, but you do know that the international pathogen surveillance network is at least able to track these pathogens and solve. Hold the line on all of their evidence and on their case because they don't say that African instability goes nuclear. Their Heath 20 drawing card is terrible. There's no interlink to their impact. It just says Djibouti is important to great power game. Nowhere does it say that it will escalate into great power conflict. It is highlighted in a really misleading way. You should probably feel comfortable dropping them just on the evidence ethics of the fact that they say that an economic and military conflict between Washington and Beijing would impact Djibouti. That is not the same thing as great power draw in, but also you can extend the fact that secessionist movements never escalate even when they're popular because there's not enough support and not enough military infrastructure that happens in the long term. That is the internal link and the warrant, or that's the warranting on the AU legitimacy collapse stuff. It's really, really clean. You know that there isn't going to be collapse, but there are always going to be intervening actors for that, but the pandemic is coming.
Cool. Ross?
Yeah.
Okay. Can I take a quick? Go for it. All right. I'm like really confused about this Djibouti evidence. Like which piece of that? Which the Heath? The Heath evidence says African rivalries from Egypt to Djibouti, Ethiopia, and Sudan risk all out military conflict.
Yeah, it's a regional military conflict. Not
What's wrong about the evidence?
right. You're saying that it causes international actor drawing. Your evidence just said it creates an all-out military conflict inside of the region, right? The warrant that's highlighted about great power, the great power warrant that's highlighted in the back half of the card is that the U.S. and China have all secure military bases in Djibouti, and it says specifically in a conflict between
I'm stopping. Like where are you talking about? Like which piece of the card are you talking about?
The back half of the card where you highlight the true powder keg. Okay, it says Djibouti is a true powder keg, not for rivals, but also for the larger great power. An economic conflict between Washington and Beijing would impact Djibouti, threatening to disrupt trade. Not the other way around. The conflict in Djibouti.
The card says it.
No,
That's why it says not.
It does not say the counterfactual. Wait, your card doesn't say the counterfactual. It says that if there's conflict between U.S. and China, Djibouti would be affected.
What is a true powder keg? Not merely for regional rivalries, but also.
It says a larger great power game between U.S. and China. Your evidence. Wait. let's use specific words when we're talking about like international relations. It just says that Djibouti is important for the larger interplay of great powers between US and China. It does not say a conflict in Djibouti would draw in US and China. Those are two very different things. You're not proving the counterfactual.
Global power. Yeah, it like uses the word drawn.
Yes, but the warranting on the top is specifically the drawing has, if it's the.
Okay, you can take that question.
Yeah, sure, we'll take a question. Who's drawing?
Great powers.
Yeah, which one?
Like the US, China, Russia, Japan, France. I'm reading.
Which great powers are taking which country's side with the impact?
Well, that's the point. The point is like multiple countries are fetching for the same country. Can I have a question?
Sure.
What was the last response?
Oh, but the internal link to AU legitimacy is secessionist movement. So you look at not the right part right under it, the internal link to why that legitimacy must go away, because like borders, but like this policy of borders would fail and would create like secessionist instability. But if we respond to a link which the secessionist movements don't escalate, then there is no loss of legitimacy because even if these like borders are not like
I would like to point to the first piece of the journalistic evidence, recognition could challenge laws and principles. Africa adopted a policy respecting borders boundaries.
right, and the reason why it would create instability because they're not respecting these borders.
It's the argument that it would challenge principles. It's not predicated on
Challenging
secessionist
principles doesn't mean there's a lockdown of the AU. The reason that they're
Okay, but you have contested.
yeah,
our
what
argument is that
we responded to the secessionist link. If you look at your evidence, it literally just says
like there's
like
there's two different links. There's AU collapse and there's secessionist. We agree that secession is not escalate, but our argument is that because the AU has like looked towards colonial borders for like the past 5 decades, when you recognize it suddenly, it destroys legitimacy. It causes internal disarray with the region.
and the disagreement only
If we look at the evidence that you're talking about specifically,
Our case leaders. This round breaks down very simply. AU legitimacy is incredibly high over the past few decades. The affirmative part of that, they have dropped that the affirmative violates the agreement or the Constitution Act, which started before, that they have sanctified for the past decades, because they're violating the non-interference principle. But as a result of that, countries would disband from the AU because that was the founding principle of the African Union. As a result, countries who no longer engage in cooperation, the AU fosters, and that would break down things like trade. And trade is ultimately the best thing that AU fosters economic interdependence and increases the likelihood of conflict. Independently, they dropped that nuclear conflict causes extinction. They dropped that conflict as a result of great powers being brought in for the heat evidence means that escalation is likely to occur. This tit for tat escalation, miscalculation, etc., cause extinction. Both sides agree that nuclear war causes extinction. The only responses they have, the first argument they say is that they say that the great powers are not drawn in. The heat evidence is like perfectly fine. It says that great powers are being drawn in because of conflict over Djibouti. Yes, the counterfactual might be true, but it says both. They say no internally, yes or no, yes internally. Our argument is separate from secessionism because about this constitution back, not just about those movements. That delineation is by the evidence incredibly clear. At that point, they pretty much dropped the weighing. Our argument is that we turn case because as a result of secessionist conflicts, nobody wants to research in countries that are undergoing conflict. Independently, they drop the cooperation breaks down because countries will no longer participate in the AU. They say that the WHO solves, sure, but like the WHO isn't the only organization that solves. They have a reason when the WHO is uniquely key. Also extend the argument that we weigh on time frame because our argument happens immediately. Countries will immediately have the perception that they cannot cooperate with each other because the non-interference principles being bound and drawn in, and the borders are being undrawn, so they cannot cooperate. On their case, going for impact agents is so clean. Our argument is that they do not have impact. Connects do not cause war because they reciprocally affect everyone. They say the COVID was close enough to SARS. Like, where is the card for this? And also, this is irrelevant. Our argument is that its drugs are so bad, countries will recognize it affects both sides equally, so they cannot acquire or send nukes, which is why there's no historical precedent for this. Their weighing is also just like irrelevant. They say it turns case because pandemics distract us from wars. Like, I'm just confused with this argument, and there's no internal impact to distraction. They say that intervening actors, this is nonsense. Intervening actors is new analysis that is unparted. They haven't read reason why intervening actors uniquely cause conflict now or prevent conflict now.
All right, it would be on our actually we have 31st wave. Everyone goes time and storage. What they've misunderstood is that for them to win the nuclear conflict, the heat evidence is in the pretext of conflicts breaking out. If we win that there's no secessionist movements, there's no conflicts in Africa that then cause instability to create nuclear war. Which is why you can extend the response. The secessionist movements never escalated out of the 100 movements that there have been no escalation, even though 13 that have been in Africa. Remember, even if they win, that AU legitimacy goes down, the heat evidence, which is a draw into nuclear war, is if there's conflict in Africa through secessionist states, which never happens if you don't have secession movements, which is internal link deep into they can see, which don't get impacted. There's some issues they don't get the impact. At that point, it can extend our case. Some of the other scope hypothesis unique understanding vectors that there's these are public with the increasing climate change and small really lack information system recognized from the state directly with the international patterns surveillance or results or extinction with hundreds of chemical weapons, mass destruction use, the structural use of lower and hospital life of the nuclear and extinction star. Only they get to respond to once they impact the we said that the amount of uncertainty definitely triggers triad and apps. You don't know what happens. They've not responded to triad that we do not know where these positives are coming from, or we've never studied them, which means there's definitely a risk of extinction. But second, they've conceded the fact that it doesn't matter if the EU legitimacy breaks out because it can stop the positives from leaving Somaliland, then there's no spillover effect. Our argument is if you do research in Somaliland, being able to manufacture and communicate to external actors to the United States and the UN, what's happening in Somaliland, what's happening with these pathogens, you don't need the EU to solve for our impact, which means they definitely don't get the prerequisite to our case or the link into that case. At that point, even if you buy that, we don't get an extinction impact at the end of the day because they've conceded that their only impact happens from secessionist movement, which is for the heat cars about. At that point, the only risk of office is stopping a small pandemic, which definitely still happens in Africa. There's no other impact but to legitimacy. At that point, know two things. EU legitimacy is not needed to solve pandemics, but you do know that they don't have an impact on the kids. At best, they're just winning a link with no impact. At best, we're winning an impact. The pandemics in Africa still ruin the legitimacy in some way and cause some sort of conflict and cause some sort of damage in Africa. They've also considered to predict that there's always going to be an intervening after shock. The impact of everyone cares about war, but no one's talking about pandemics in the region. Pandemics in the region are still causing some harm, and pandemics in the region kill the legitimacy of the AU. So even if you buy the link harder into their link, because when a pandemic that's novel comes out of Africa, definitely makes people think that people in Africa aren't doing enough to stop these pandemics, which is why we definitely solve better. At that point, you can just win on the trial they have, and there's functionally no impact to their internal.
Right, you're around it.